asserting executive power that has really been a disturbing pattern in this administration. But secondly, there was a lack of acknowledgement of the problems people are facing. So, for example, the president, nowhere did he acknowledge that as a result of the Obama economic policies, today we have the lowest labor force participation this country has ever seen since 1978. That what we're doing isn't working, and what he proposed is more of the same policies that have caused, under the Obama administration, the rich to get richer, and yet people who are struggling, young people, Hispanics, African Americans, single moms, by the millions to lose their jobs, to lose their health insurance, to struggle, and he didn't acknowledge any of that.
Well, he did talk about economic struggle, but let's unpack your 2 points. The first one having to do with the president taking executive action. He talked specifically about the action he took today to raise the minimum wage for federal contract workers in the future. Not a huge step. In fact, Speaker Boehner said it probably affects, in the immediate term, no one. But the argument from the White House is, look, the president wants to work with Congress, but there is a group of Republicans, Tea Party Republicans, such as yourself, such as many in the House, who block any sort of attempts at compromise, and therefore he has to do something. What's your response to that argument?
I mean, that's the talking point. You're right. But he doesn't try to work with Congress. He doesn't talk with Congress. I remember when we were having the battle last fall about defunding Obamacare, I remember one surreal meeting where he invited every Republican over to the White House. All the Republican senators sat us in a room and said, I invited you here to tell you I will not compromise, I will not negotiate on anything. I've never been in a meeting where someone brings you in to say, we're not even going to talk about it. You know, if you look at, let's take a couple of examples of bipartisan pro-growth policies.
Well, when you say he said he wouldn't compromise, you mean he wouldn't compromise on, he wasn't going to defund Obamacare?
Well, and you know, it's interesting, in highlight, I bet you there are a lot of Democrats that wish he hadn't taken that hard line, because as we've seen the disaster that is Obamacare, you've got now a dozen Democrats who've publicly come out for delaying many aspects of Obamacare,
Sure.
which we could have agreed to do then, but he dug in and said he wasn't interested in talking or compromising. You know, there are many pro-growth, pro-economic, pro-job policies that have bipartisan support. For example, building the Keystone Pipeline. Overwhelming bipartisan support. Over 60 senators voted for it last year, including a number of Democrats.
Right.
President Obama is single-handedly blocking building the Keystone Pipeline, which would immediately create tens of thousands of high-paying jobs, and Harry Reid won't even allow it to come up for a vote.
But the Keystone Pipeline, obviously, whatever the merits of the project, that's not an economic plan.
But it would produce tens of thousands of new jobs.
Right.
Another example where you have bipartisan, talk about areas of compromise. Bipartisan agreement, repealing the medical devices tax. We had a vote on that, had over 70 senators, huge bipartisan vote, but once again, Harry Reid, at President Obama's urging, won't allow it to come up for a vote. The medical device tax is punitive. It kills jobs. It kills innovation. What we ought to be doing if we want to see jobs is not raising regulations, adding regulations. We ought to be championing fundamental tax reform, fundamental regulatory reform, reducing the burden on small businesses. That's how you get jobs.
You have a scathing, if you'll permit me to use the word, scathing op-ed in the Wall Street Journal coming out tomorrow. The Imperial Presidency of Barack Obama is the title, the subtitle. In the nation's history, there is simply no precedent for an American president so wantonly ignoring federal law. Now, if you look at the record of executive orders, this president has issued fewer executive orders than George W. Bush at this point in his presidency, Bill Clinton at this point in his presidency. How can you say an imperial presidency wantonly ignoring federal law?
Because, Jake, the measure is not how many executive orders, it's what substantively he has done. Over and over again, if he disagrees with a law, he simply says he won't enforce it. He's done that in immigration law, on drug laws, on welfare law, and most strikingly on Obamacare. The text of Obamacare says the employer mandate kicks in on January 1st, 2014. Contrary to law, President Obama just granted a one-year extension to big business. He has no authority in the statute to do so, but he told big business, ignore that part of the law for a year. The text of the law says members of Congress should be on the exchanges with no subsidies, just like millions of Americans. Because Harry Reid and the Senate Democrats didn't want to be on the exchanges, the president unilaterally granted them an exemption the law doesn't allow. And let me tell you the most striking one of all. When over 5 million Americans lost their health insurance because Obamacare made their health insurance illegal, every other president facing something like that would have gone to Congress, would have tried to negotiate a way to fix a law that was hurting people. What he did instead is he held a press conference and he told insurance companies, issue laws that the statute Obamacare makes illegal. There is no precedent in the history of our country for a president instructing private companies, violate the law, I'm telling you to ignore the law. And I gotta say, that's dangerous when the president picks and chooses what laws to follow.
I know President Obama disagrees with how you're assessing many of those things. I will be interviewing him on Thursday. We'll run the interview Friday, so we'll get some response. Wolf, we're going to have more with Senator Ted Cruz later on CNN, but for now I'm going to throw it back to you.
All right, thanks very